some technical difficulties. Do we have a recess for 5 minutes?
So the meeting will continue. The live stream has stopped. It is being recorded. So under laws, the recording will go up live afterwards. So there is some technical issues there, but it is being recorded as we speak.
It's back on.
So it's back. Any further questions, councillors? With no further questions, I'll seek a mover. Moving the motion, Councillor Hansford. Seconding the motion, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Hansford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Retaining this within council's control is a good idea. This is a fairly, as has been explained, a high-profile site, high-valued site, and having a third party take over control of this, we have seen in other areas of the Shire where it hasn't worked exceptionally well. So I think being able to maintain this site with some cultural background, I think is a great thing for the Shire. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hansford. Councillor Rowe.
Yeah, I just want to agree with what Councillor Hansford said, but this plan it provides guidance and actions to direct the future management of the reserve for the next 10 years, or from 2020 to 2030. And as we all know, there is a lot of high local conservation significance within this reserve. So I think it's best if it's in council's ownership to look after this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rowe. Any councillor like to speak against the motion? No councillor speaking against the motion. I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 7.8, Local Roads and Community Infrastructure Program Funding Allocation. Again, Director Josipovic.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the 22nd of May 2020, the Australian Government announced a new $500 million Local Road and Community Infrastructure Program. This program is designed to support local councils to deliver priority local road and community infrastructure projects across Australia, supporting jobs and the resilience of local economies to help communities bounce back from the COVID-19 pandemic. Since the adoption of Council's 2020-21 budget in June of this year, Council has been allocated $1,333,655 under this program. As a result, Council is required to determine eligible community road and community infrastructure projects that these funds may be allocated to. I just want to point out some of the key eligibility criteria because they play an important role in the decision Council needs to make. The key eligibility criteria for projects to be nominated include that they are local road and community infrastructure projects that involve the construction, maintenance and/or improvements to council-owned assets, including natural assets that are generally accessible to the public. The projects must be delivered by 30th of June 2021. Projects must be additional to existing 2020-21 works programs. And the program funding cannot be used to substitute other funding sources, including council budget allocations. Officers have reviewed project options with due regard to the eligibility criteria, and in particular the requirement that projects must be additional to existing 2020-21 work plans and be delivered by the 30th of June. A number of projects considered are also reliant on state government funding, which the program allocation would supplement. Based on this assessment, it is recommended that Council allocate the $1,333,655 as part of the Federal Government's Local Road and Community Infrastructure Program funding to the following projects: $700,000 to Reserve Road Bridge in Rokewood, $15,500 to the Maud Recreation Reserve Lookout Water Supply Project, $240,455 to playground renewal across the Shire, $177,700 to Inverleigh female-friendly change rooms, $100,000 to the Golden Plains Shire Youth Hub, and $100,000 to the Bannockburn Skate Park. It is also recommended the Council confirm the Golden Plains Shire Youth Hub as a priority project for funding under the state government's Growing Suburbs program, And that thirdly, council approves allocation of funds from the federal government's Michael Road and Community Infrastructure Program to the Meredith Shelford Road widening project in the event other funding sources rely on to deliver the Inverleith female-friendly change rooms, the Golden Plains Shire Youth Hub, or the Bannockburn Skate Park project is not successful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director. Yes, councillors, any questions? Councillor Evans, followed by Councillor Kirby.
In regard to the recommendation 3, of course we know that we have to spend this money and we need to be able to shift it if we can't get the funding from the other sources. This could also have limitations in terms of manpower and other things which might have impact on any of the others. Could I ask if the wording there be changed to reflect that, rather than just call the Inverleith female friendly and the youth hub and the Bannockburn skate park, rather than tie it down to those, just make it broader for all of them, just in case we don't know what will happen with any particular thing if we're not ready or something else happens. So that the possibility is the whole lot could go to Shelford Road. Is that a fair request?
Sorry, to yes.
Yeah, so I think that is a reasonable change to ask, because the reason we named those projects was in the recommendation is they are reliant on some state funding. So the focus for us was if the state funding doesn't get up, then the project can't proceed with just the federal funding. But on reflection, I think Councillor Evans' point is just because we apply for some of these and nominate them to the federal government, if they say no for whatever reason, we need to have a backup plan. So I'm comfortable with changing that recommendation to be broader, that the money be allocated to the Meredith Shelford Road widening project in the event any of the above projects aren't successful through the nomination process or something. Yeah.
So replacing the wording of each individual project by
In the event,
in the event of not
Yeah,
funding.
in the event other sources relied on to deliver projects or project nominations are not approved. Because just to be, for clarity, we've signed the funding agreement, but what we now have to do is nominate projects to the federal government's program, and they'll assess whether they're eligible or not. So even though they may not be relying on state government funding, they might still say, no, we don't think it's eligible, so you need to find another project. And we won't have time to come back to council and deliver the program by June 2021.
So correct me if I'm wrong, please, Mr. Mayor. So really all we're saying there is that sources relied on to deliver any of the above projects listed in recommendation 1.
Yeah. Yes, yes. I think they will. Because we are relying on the federal government still, so that's.
And the state.
Yes.
Just replacing that by any of the above projects.
I'd be comfortable.
Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Kirby.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if the Rosewood Recreation Reserve Precinct was a high priority for for it to be recommended for this federal funding of $1.3 million. The Rosewood Recreation Reserve has been in the planning for 8 years, and it should be shovel ready because we did miss out on the grant about 3 years ago from the federal government, and we just seem to be getting pushed down the line. And let's face it, we know that for the next 5 years, Rosewood, the recreation centre there and the football club is definitely not going to get better facilities for at least 5 years. And this will probably be the last of the large funding that comes out of the federal government. As for the wind farms, we definitely cannot rely on that money because that project hasn't even started and the money won't be coming forward until those wind towers are up and going. So can you please explain why it has not been a high priority for this funding?
I wouldn't say it hasn't been a high priority, but again, I'll go back to the eligibility criteria that we have to be able to deliver the full project by 30th of June 2021. What we have at the moment with Rokewood is a concept plan that we use for a funding application, but we haven't got any detailed design plan. So in order to deliver Rokewood, we'd have to go to tender for the design process. Well, firstly, we'd have to go back to the stakeholders and sign off on the concept plan, make sure all the stakeholders are still happy with whatever we prepared last time. We'd have to go to tender for the detailed design services, which would be an architect typically, and that in itself is a best case scenario 8-week process to get a tender in. Then you've got to do the designs, and then after that we have to go to tender for construction. Most of these projects, designs are either well underway or completed, and that's what I would call shovel ready. Shovel ready is if you've got a set of design plans that you can construct to. At the moment, we haven't got that with Rokewood.
Just on that point, I'm a bit disappointed because if we have gone for funding before, I think that those design plans should have already been there. We're already gone for funding beforehand.
So is there a top question in there, Councillor Kirby? It's time for questions. Is there a question?
So the question will be, seeing we haven't got detailed plans, we'd like to see this in next year's budget to be, for this project to be completed.
You have the right as a councillor to bring those forward during the budget
Yes.
process and have had the opportunity over the past few years to do so. But I think Director Joseph clearly answered that the Rokewood project would be eligible for this funding, and hence the reason it's not in here. Councillors, any further questions?
I'd like to make a point then, Mr Mayor, that in 2017, we had $650,000 in the budget for Rokewood, and they walked away.
No, they didn't. They have not walked away from it.
They did, we were going to do this. Right,
We're not, councillors, it's time for questions, we're not in debate.
right.
So if there's a question, more than happy to, if you, through the process of debate, want to speak to for or against, please do so. Any further questions, councillors? With no further questions, I'll seek a mover. Moving the motion, Councillor
Yeah, I'm good.
Phelan. Seconding the motion, Councillor Gilbert. At the same time, Councillor Gilbert. Councillor Gilbert, second. So I just both your hand up.
Oh, that's whatever.
Councillor Gilbert,
That's fine.
Councillor Phelan.
I think that it's really good to get money from the federal government and the state government to do projects in our municipality. I think that they're very dependent on funding coming forward, and I think the backup plan that's been mentioned here will be well worthwhile. We can shift to that Meredith Road, and if we can get the money, well and good, but if we can't get the money, well, we go back to base one. So all those, the hub and the skate park are all dependent on other funding out of state government. So seeing we've got a backup plan, I think it's a well worthwhile exercise.
Just for a point of clarity, Councillor Phelan, the motion that you're moving, was that with the inclusion of the words we spoke about
That's right.
before?
Yep.
So just to clarify that, so the Shelford Road widening project, in the event of other funding sources relied on to deliver any of the above projects, is not successful.
That's correct.
So, Councillor Gilbert.
Yes, Mr Mayor, thank you. I would just like to say I'm really pleased to see that we have discussed and talked about the playground renewal across the Shire rather than just two specific playgrounds. $240,000 is a lot of money, so I'm really pleased to see that hopefully Doreel, Linton, Garibaldi and Haddon Lyons parks also will all get some a bit of a spruce up or something in relation to this extra money, so that'll be great. Thank you.
Any councillor like to speak against the motion? Councillor Kirby.
Thank you. As I stated just before, I think that it's disappointing that Rokewood Recreation Reserve was not included in this funding. And I just would like to mention, how does the youth hub in Bannockburn compare to the 800 residents who use the Rokewood Recreation Facility? when Bannockburn already has a youth hub in the cultural centre. Another example is the Inverleigh female change rooms. Girls football is played on a Sunday and the change rooms that are there should be utilised. And they can be accommodated from male to female. If we also look at the numbers regarding the Geddes Road Bridge, I would be more in support of that one than the Recreation Road, just down to the traffic count on the roads of what gets used. And I know the Geddes Road Bridge is a vital concern for fires, and it's one of the escape routes out of Jareel, especially when there's a fire coming from the north. It is also home of the school bus run, which now at the moment has to deviate and go about 3 kilometres out of its way. So I'm just a bit concerned that the priorities haven't really come to us, to the council, and we're not really having a bigger say on what's coming out within the communities. I think that's all I have to say at this stage.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kirby. Would anyone like to speak for the motion? Councillor Phelan, I'll ask you to close.
Look, Mr Mayor, I think it's all been said. I can understand where Councillor Kirby is coming to a certain extent, but I think we've got worthwhile projects there, and I think that I'd be very sceptical about getting the money, but if we do, they're worthwhile, but we have got a fallback.
Thank you very much, Councillor Phelan. I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour of the motion, those against the motion is carried. Item 7.9, Bannockburn Family Service Centre Long Day Care Lease Proposal. Director O'Sullivan to introduce that report, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Following the EOI process that was undertaken in January of this year in relation to the lease of part of the Bannockburn Family Services Centre, Council, in April, Council resolved to authorise the CEO to commence negotiations with Cardinia Childcare as the preferred provider. This report now makes recommendations on the next steps as part of that negotiations. It's seeking Council's authorisation for the CEO to commence the statutory process to release for public exhibition the lease proposal for a period of 28 days, requesting a call for submissions and subsequently providing the opportunity for respondents to be heard at a special council meeting likely to be in late August. Depending on the outcome of the submission process, Council will have an opportunity to further consider the execution of the lease at another special meeting in early September. It's also important to note that since the council briefing, further negotiation has occurred with Cardinia, initially proposing that we commence its operations on 31st of August 2020. However, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the parties are negotiating a longer transition period to enable Cardinia to commence operating from the facility at the beginning of 2021. This is a matter of further negotiation, along with some other matters of minor nature. And I also note that this recommendation authorises the Council's Chief Executive Officer or his delegate to negotiate any final amendments to the proposed lease. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director O'Sullivan. Councillors, do we have any questions? If there's no questions, I'll seek a mover. Motion, Councillor Evans, seconding the motion, Councillor Kirby. Councillor Evans, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, this has been a long process. We're on a pathway. I'm very pleased that the council has been able to stay on this path. It's been very difficult, and we know we're at the end at the moment. Yet we know that our CEO is doing the best he can to enable this to get to the point where we'll all be happy. Unfortunately, COVID is there and we have to deal with it, and this is just a continuation of that, and we're probably not the only people dealing with this type of problem in a whole range of areas. So it's basically a work in progress transfer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Evans. Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I believe that with us going forward and Cardinia wanting to take over in January, I think it's going to be a lot more stability for the families and the children of the centre. So at least they're staying with the same care workers and the same surroundings. So when new children might commence next year, it'll be a whole new fresh start. So I actually think it's a good result at the moment to hold off until January.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kirby. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? With nobody speaking against the motion, I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 7.10, the Local Government Act 2020 implementation. Again, Director O'Sullivan, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In order to achieve compliance with Stage 2 implementation of the phased introduction of the new Local Government Act 2020, the following documents need to be adopted by the 1st of September 2020. These include the Council Expenses Policy, the revised Audit and Risk Committee Charter, and the Delegation Council to CDO. There are also two others, the Appointment and Delegation Delegated Committees. However, there's no action required for Golden Plains Shire Council. And the other is the Appointment of Asset Committees. However, again, we don't have those, so it's no action for us. I'll take the rest of the report as read and recommend that these documents as attached are adopted.
Thank you very much, Director O'Sullivan. Councillors, questions? Councillor Evans.
In our briefing, this came up and I asked a few questions that I wanted to ask in the space with the delegations. And the CEO referred to this being brought back to council for us to go through that again. Now, is this jumping in front of me?
No, through the Mayor, I'll note that that will be coming to the August council meeting in relation to the delegations, instrument of delegations. So this report is purely from the council to the CEO, and then the further one will be council to CEO to the officers.
So the review of that document
Will
will
be
be done in
August.
September,
August.
August. Okay, thank you very much.
Any further questions, councillors? Second mover. Moving the motion, Councillor Evans. Second motion, Councillor Evans.
Yeah, look, basically, this is a work in progress type document that needs to be done on a regular basis. Now my concerns are explained. I've got no problem with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hansford.
I think, Mr Mayor, this is the implementation that has to be done by September. It's good to see that we're ahead of schedule and we're right into it. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hansford. Anyone like to speak against the motion? No councillor speaking against the motion. I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Item 7.11, Local Government Act 2020 implementation documents for public exhibition. Again, Director O'Sullivan, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So as per the previous report, this again is to achieve compliance with Stage 2 implementation of the new Local Government Act. And these following documents need to now progress to public exhibition in order for them to be adopted by the 1st of September 2020. These include the governance rules, which also includes the public participation in council meeting policy and election period policy, and also the public transparency policy. The establishment of the Golden Plains Shire Council governance rules will bring a repeal of the following document being Local Law Number 1, 2019, Council Meeting Procedures and Common Seal. Following the public exhibition, the governance rules above mentioned policies must be adopted by council by the 1st of September 2020. To meet this deadline, it's recommended that these documents be approved by placing them on public exhibition for 2 weeks, from Wednesday the 29th of July through to Wednesday the 12th of August 2020. And the rest is report is read. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director O'Sullivan. Councillors, any questions? Seek a mover. Moving the motion, Councillor Kirby, second the motion, councillor Rowe. Councillor Kirby, please.
Thank you. Yes, there's a lot of, quite a few changes that, will be happening. But the main one, I think, is the public transparency policy, which everyone, should have a look at and take on board. And I think this is just going to be a bonus for our communities to have this in place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, councillor Kirby. Councillor Rowe.
You know, I think the recommendation is pretty straightforward, so yeah, I'll support it.
Thank you very much. That being said, anyone would like to speak against the motion? I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour of the motion? The motion is carried. Item 7.12, the review of instrument of appointment and authorisation Planning Environment Act 1987. Again, Director O'Sullivan, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The CEO, the Chief Executive Officer, CEO, appoints the majority of the authorised officers under Council's delegation to the CEO. However, the appointment of authorised officers under the Planning and Environment Act 1987 cannot be delegated and must be made through a resolution of Council. The instrument of appointment authorisation under the Planning and Environment Act was last reviewed and adopted by Council in March 2020. However, as part of the new Local Government Act, it has been reviewed to be updated to reflect the changes required. As a result, it's recommended that Council consider and adopt the revised instrument as shown in attachment 1. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director O'Sullivan. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Evans.
I might have been confused with my question last time. I think I was referring to this one. Is that correct?
Again, so through the Mayor, again, this one relates to the appointment and authorisation under the Planning and Environment Act. So it relates to the instrument of appointing and authorising officers to be able to undertake authorised officers. However, what you're referring to is the delegations, instrument of delegations, which is actually delegating activities and the powers
But
to
also-
officers. So
yes.
again, that will still come to the August meeting.
Will this one be reviewed properly before we adopt it?
No, this one, that was completed in March 2020, and all that this is requesting is a change to reflect the change from the Local Government Act 2020. Very cosmetic changes.
Thank you.
Any further questions, councillors? I'll seek a mover. Moving the motion, councillor Kirby. Seconding the motion, councillor Gilbert. Councillor Kirby, speaking to the motion, please.
Yes, thank you. I think that, Philippa has said it all. At the moment, it's just basically saying what staff changes have taken place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, councillor Kirby. Councillor Gilbert.
No comment, thanks.
Thank you very much. Any councillor like to speak against the motion? I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour of the motion is carried. Item 7.13, the Council Plan Implementation Quarterly Report number 4, 2019-2020. Again, Director O'Sullivan, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So the Council, this report provides a progress update for the 2019-20 actions outlined in the Council Plan 2017-2021. Also noting that this is the fourth quarter and the final quarter of the year ending June 2020. I will note that there's a number of items that have been listed as achieved throughout the year. I won't read them out in detail, but it is highlighted in the report, and also noting that a lot of these things have been achieved while under the pressures of the COVID-19 pandemic, and also acknowledging that we have provided support to our businesses and to our OKs during this time as well. I'll take the rest of the report as read. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director O'Sullivan. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Evans?
When I went through the agenda on this one, the conclusion there basically says 100% of planned activities. But if you go through the report, it wasn't 100%. There was quite a few that were quite a bit lower than that. Is that correct?
Yes, through the Mayor, that is correct.
Oh, I suppose we should change that figure, shouldn't we?
Good point. We can provide some more clarity around that.
Thank you.
Any further questions, councillors? No further questions, I'll seek a mover. Moving the motion, councillor Evans, second the motion, councillor Rowe. Councillor Evans.
Oh, look, this is just standard reporting of the situation as it's been running, and reading all the reports in regards to where we're at. Some of them I'm surprised we went as high as we should be on some of them, but generally speaking, it gives us a scorecard where we're at, so thank you.
Councillor Rowe.
Well, pretty straightforward, just a progress update really for the final quarter ending June 2020. Thank you.
Thank you very much, councillor Rowe. Any councillor like to speak against the motion? No councillor speaking against the motion, I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 7.14, the financial statements for the year ended 30th of June 2020, interim results. Again, Director O'Sullivan, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is to provide council with interim advice on our financial performance for the year ending 30th of June 2020, noting that there is some processing still to be completed, and so these are interim results. I will note that currently we are reporting revenue of 44.9 against a total expenditure of 38.4, which is resulting in an operating surplus of 6.4 million. And an underlying surplus of 3 million, which is in fact, compared to the budget deficit of 2.5 million, this is a better result due to additional grants received, some increased supplementary rates revenue than budgeted, some savings in our employee costs, which is a result of the changeover in staff and the gap between when new staff commenced, and also some reduction in our contracts and materials, mainly related again to some programs not being delivered as part of the COVID-19. I'll also note that our capital budget or capital expenditure is currently at 21 million, with $6.5 million to be identified to be carried forward into 2021. But also noting that of the capital program, over 90% of the projects were delivered, and that can be seen in attachment 1 as attached in the report. I'll take the rest of the report as read. Thank you.
Much, Director O'Sullivan. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Kirby.
Yes, just in the report, there's something there about gifted asset revenue of 1.1 million. I was just wondering if you could let us know what that is, please.
Yes, of course. So gifted asset revenue relates to the gifted assets provided through our developers when they've built infrastructure and then they gift it across to the council to maintain. Due to, that's something that we cannot do until the end of the year, once we actually value what those assets will be worth, once we get the rates confirmed, and also just to go through the processing. So that's why it's a year-end processing requirement. We always estimate that it's around $1.1 million, and at this stage, it's estimated to be along those lines.
Thank you.
Councillor Gilbert.
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. Can I just have a clarification around, it says decrease in childcare fees, 316,000, which we all understand where that's come from, but a decrease in animal registration fees of 77,000. That seems rather large. Is there all the animals running out of our shire, or we just stopped registering them?
So I note that can sometimes just be due to the way we've budgeted the numbers. So potentially we expected to have a higher budgeted number and then coming lower than expected. But I can certainly take that on notice.
I suppose I'm just curious to know whether it's just a general theme for no longer paying registrations, or...
Actually, I might just refer to Director.
Yeah, so as part of our COVID-19 response too, animal registration is generally due in April,
Yes.
and we've extended that to the end of September with payment plans. Animals still had to be registered by April, but they could pay it off till September, so that may explain some of that reduced income. Because
So it's just a reflection then of the fees, not the number of animals.
That'd be nice.
Lovely, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Any further questions, councillors? I'll say Councillor Rowe.
Just one, with the gifted asset revenue, with that, are we inheriting anything there that we shouldn't be?
I'll refer to Director Fitch on that.
So generally speaking, it's the roads, new developments, the roads that the developer constructs, the drainage infrastructure. So when we issue certificate of compliance with the subdivision, then those assets become ours to maintain. But we don't accept them until we have a checklist of things to do. So, proof rolling, all those sorts of things that have to happen. We go out and inspect. So it's only when the subdivision is complete and the certificate of compliance is issued, we assume control of those assets.
So with a little bit of land that we inherited there, or been gifted, I should say, at Bateton on the Murrible River, in relation to the Schroeder tussock population. So we'll take all that on board, will we? And
Well,
we'll manage that now.
My understanding is that they have a management plan that they have to complete yet, and we haven't got that yet as a complete document, and then they'll have to enact it, the developers.
With the management of Schroeder tussock down there, it'll take 10 years because of the build-up of seed and the land in the ground. So
We'll take that one on notice, just get a little bit off topic, and we can bring that back if you like, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Hansford, is that, sorry, was that a hand?
No, sorry.
My apologies. Any further questions, councillors? I'll seek the mover. Moving the motion, Councillor Evans, second the motion, Councillor Kirby.
Look, at the moment, it's only a, pretty interim result. I like to see the real McCoy before I start getting my teeth into it. So, basically, it's just as it is. Nothing to worry about at the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Evans. Councillor Kirby.
No, I think it's sensible.
Any councillor like to speak against the motion? When councillor speaking against the motion, I will put it to vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Item 7.15, in principle performance statement and the principal financial statements for the year ended the 30th of June 2020. Again, please, Director Solomon.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So this is something that we need to do each year due to the tight timeframe in relation to approving the in-principle performance statement and in-principle financial statements following the completion of the audit. It's necessary to delegate the authority to our Audit and Risk Committee to approve the statements and to authorise 2 councillor representatives of the committee to certify the meeting scheduled for the 8th of September 2020. The main reason for this is because the final VARGO audit will not commence until following the Audit and Risk Committee, and the council election as a result does not have a council meeting in October. The performance statement and financial statements can be approved in principle because as long as there's no material changes to the accounts that are presented and can be then adopted by the Audit and Risk Committee for them to then be noted by the council at that following meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Solomon. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Gilbert.
Can I just clarify, we've obviously got, if the Mayor or Councillor Rowe are unable to be a part of it, so Councillor Rowe's delegate is from the council body as well though, isn't it?
Council.
Yes,
Thank you.
that's correct. That is correct. It must be someone on the council.
Thank you.
Any further questions, councillors? No further questions.
I'll move it.
Sorry, Councillor Rowe moving motion, second motion, Councillor Phelan. Councillor Rowe.
Well, look, this is pretty straightforward, just some legislative requirements and procedures that must be acted on in accordance with section 132 Local Government Act. And I just note there too, due to the impacts from COVID-19, the timeline's been extended from the 20th of September to the 20th of November. So, in saying that, I support the delegation authorisation, the recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rowe. Councillor Phelan.
It's straightforward. It's something you have to do every year. It's one of those things that comes around like Christmas, so we've just got to move on.
Any other questions?
Christmas might be
Thank you
different
very
this
much,
year.
Councillor Phelan. Anyone like to speak against the motion? No councillor speaking against the motion. I'll put it to vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Item 7.16, councillor expenses
I
and
move.
meeting attendance report. Fourth quarter ending. We have to take the report as read, councillors.
No.
Sorry? You you'd like to have the report read out to Councillor Kirby?
Yes, please.
Director Sullivan, if you could introduce the report. Jane, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the report provides a record of expenditure made on behalf of the councils in the performance of their duties for the fourth quarter of 2019-20. It now also includes quarterly updates on councillor attendance at the ordinary meetings of council and the special meetings of council. And the report is provided in accordance with the legislation and policy. And I will now take the rest of the report as read. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Sullivan. Councillors, is there any questions? Councillor Kirby, followed by Councillor Evans.
Thank you. Just noting that the annual budget was $34,175 and the percentage actual spent was $11,988, being the budget for the councillors. I'm just wondering, rather than that 35.8% that has been spent, could the remainder go back, rather than go back into retained earnings, are the councillors able to spend that money on initiatives within the Shire? So not so much us, but some priority projects that we could see fit. So rather than, because we are saving money by some of us who might not claim our car expenses or childcare or things like that, and it'd just be nice to see our councillor money going back to projects within the Shire.
So through the Mayor, that can certainly be a decision of the councillors. It will automatically go into consolidated revenue. However, I know that if there's projects that they would like to nominate that, as part of the next year's budget, it can certainly be included.
Thank you very much, Director Sullivan. Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Evans, did you have a question or was?
Yeah, I was just wondering why the individual expenses wasn't presented in this document as it has in the past. But, and the other thing is probably more a comment on Councillor Kirby's question. I can see her point in regard to this, but at the moment, I think keeping it back into consolidated is probably wise, because we know we're going to have extra cost for training of new council candidates, which I'm not sure if it was fully funded. Is that in our previous budget? Has that been, would that be the case?
So through the Mayor, there is a allocated budget per councillor of $3,000 as per the councillor expense policy. However, I'll also note that we also included in our budget $200,000 in relation to the council induction program. $150,000 of that goes towards the Victorian Electoral Commission. However, $50,000 relates to the training program for new councillors and the returning councillors.
But if I could respond to that, the issue at the moment, nobody actually knows what that plan is. Induction plan, do we? It's not out there.
Not at this very point in time, however, it's certainly available.
Very hard to cost, isn't it? Okay, fair
I
enough.
think we're getting off topic from the report. Is there any further questions? Councillor Expenditure. I will seek a mover if there's no further questions. Councillor Hanson moving the motion. Councillor Kirby seconding the motion. Councillor Hanson.
Nothing to report there, Mr. Mayor. It's all in the words here. We are well under our full spend as a council. It's a good look. Thank you.
Councillor Kirby.
Yeah, I think we haven't done a lot this last quarter because a lot of it's been done by Zoom or virtual meetings. But I'd just like to make sure that the next lot of councillors, whoever get on, take this on board, and hopefully we can have some extra money in the community on priority projects that might need addressing. Thank you.
Councillor Kirby. Any councillor to speak against the motion? No councillor to speak against the motion. I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 7.17, Microsoft Enterprise Agreement Renewal 2020-2022. Director O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report is to request that council resolve to award the Microsoft Enterprise Agreement from 2020 to 2022-3, using the Data3 as the implementation partner as negotiated by the MAB procurement. And to resolve the award for this agreement for 3 years against an annual budget of $153,619, which is estimated to total agreement cost of $460,000. This is part of our digital transformation strategy, with the introduction of Office 365 providing us the increased mobility, security, and also consistent platform that is now being used across the local government sector. And I'll also note that MAB procurement have recently negotiated this Microsoft pricing, and as per our procurement policy, we do not need to go through the tender process as MAB are part of the are exempt. We are able to go through this a direct tender process. Thank you.
Thank you, Director O'Sullivan. Councillors, any questions? Second mover. Moving motion, Councillor Hansford. Second motion, Councillor Evans. Councillor Hansford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This brings us into the 21st century, something that the system has been exceptionally old and outdated, and shifting into the 21st is a really good thing for those who are using it, which is all of our staff. I think it highlights the MAV value in being able to procure this. It saves us the cost and the time involved in the competitive tendering process, and it's a win for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you much, Councillor Hansford. Councillor Evans, was it sorry, no, second now?
Yeah, look, it's pretty much business as usual. I do hope that the program has a website development tool in there that can improve our website, but by God, it needs it.
Thank you very much. Anyone like to speak against the motion? Anyone speak against the motion, please vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item number 8, no notice of the motion, no petition for no urgent business. I can, and no confidential reports for decision. I'll close the meeting at 8:03, and thank you everyone for the attendance and those people that have tuned on in online. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming. Bye.